I call this meeting to order. With a quorum being present, I call this November 5th meeting of the Texas Women's University Board of Regents Finance and Audit Committee to order at
2:19 p.m.
2:19 p.m. We will now consider approval of the minutes of the committee meeting of August 13th, 2015. Do I hear a motion that the minutes be approved?
So moved.
Is there any discussion? Are there any changes or clarifications to the minutes? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion passes. We don't need to adjourn to executive session since we have no items on this agenda for executive session. Fourth, we will now take up all items on the agenda. Do I hear a motion to hear all items on the agenda as listed?
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
Second. All right, now item number 1, the fall enrollment update. Presenter, Ms. B.J. Crane.
Oh, actually, it's Gary Ray.
No? Gary, I'm sorry. Gary?
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to bring the good news from the leadership of Chancellor Phaeton. TWU is growing, and we are announcing 15,286, which is up from 15,070, but even better news, under her leadership, all 3 campuses are increasing their enrollment this fall. That's a tribute to her leadership and the many outstanding faculty that you've already heard about in their work. The undergraduate enrollment, as you know, has been growing for the last 12 years, and it has actually hit the 10,000 mark for the first time, 10,080 for the first time. Last year was 9,679. Undergraduate retention is up 1.2%. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Presidential scholars, what are they? They are valedictorians and salutatorians, and they are the most competitive to recruit, as you can imagine. And we are also up in that area to 33 this year, up from 26 last year. Top 10 ranked high school students is one in which they have assured admission to any school in Texas, and we have an increase of 18% there, up to 194 from 162 last year. We are not satisfied with this number, and we'll see lots of new initiatives in this area in the year as we work together as a faculty and staff to position ourselves for the next level of students to TWU. Also, we've had great success with 3 new dual enrollment partners. The largest is Argyle ISD, Birdville, and Carrollton Christian Academy. And we've actually doubled our enrollment in the dual credit program from 347 to over 680 this fall. Now, why is that important? A lot of people, there's a lot of controversy about early credit, credibility, rigor. You know, you hear it depending on who you talk to. But strategically in enrollment, to connect with students as early as possible, particularly quality students in the process, is really critical to make them aware of what TWU has to offer. When we talk about return on investment, of course, retention is much more than just the first year. But it is also, in many universities, it's the largest place in which many students leave between first and second year. So we made that as our initial several years ago. This is an area that Dr. Phaeton and the whole entire academic leadership is making a priority. You've already heard from prior reports to the board. We have formed a Strategic Retention Council. They are looking at best practices and ways in which to this, but as you can see, the trend line for us between first and second year is on the rise. As a matter of fact, we've gone 8% in the last 4 years. If you look at Texas, that is a very good number. And naturally, if you keep more of the second year, then hopefully you keep more of the third year, and so we begin to focus down that pipeline as we move forward. As you look at the enrollment breakdown, this year, 28% of the students that make up the enrollment were new, coming in for the first time at TWU. As you can see, there were over 500 new dual enrollment of the 680 that I mentioned. We've had consistently good number of first-year students between 1150 and 1200. That's driven by capacity. That's driven by a much tougher to get into TWU. We denied more students this year than last year, trying to make sure that we can maintain the success of our students and the capacity. We've had good increases for the last 3 years in the transfer population, even though post-recession, some of the community colleges are starting to rebound as students are going back to work. And then in the graduate area, we had a good year of comeback. We were within 33 of last year. We're seeing nationally across in most graduate programs some decline because most people returning to post-recession. And this is an area that's a high focus for us, a high priority. This is an area in which we're putting lots of extra energy in working with various offices, including academics, marketing, and recruitment, to work with them to put our best foot forward as we recruit new graduate students at TWU. As we look at credit hours are really what determines our funding. In the state of Texas, that model may change as we move forward. So, but we're happy to report a 1% increase in credit hours. And then new students, we're up by 5%, but that's made up of that large increase of dual credit, first year students transfer and grad all together. Undergraduate population also increased primarily because of that rising number of the dual credit and the transfer, which increased to 4%, and for the undergrad to tick up, but it's also driven by that retention rate that I talked about, the 1.2% retention rate that we saw there. Graduate enrollments, unfortunately, we saw a drop of about 3.4% there this year. It's an area in which we'll have to really focus on. It's not because of the quality of our programs, it's because the growing competition. Some of the markets that we're looking at, like education, are continually as the incentive to get higher education goes down because they're not incentivizing it anymore. That has impact. So those are the areas in which we'll focus in the next year. There are 2 reports that we give every year just so you know the difference, because you may look on a state website and see a different number than you see on our fact book online. And the difference is the state does not allow us to report 100% online students from out of state. So we have to take those numbers out. So the difference between the number I gave you, the 15,286 and the 15,146 is that difference of those that are out of state. So I'm happy to report that we have reached 15,000 for the first time in the state report, and that's always good news. That concludes my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item
George was
number,
gonna say this is the good news report. George would say that was
Yes,
the good news
that was a
report.
good news report.
I have a question. Was your dual enrollment, did you all focus on getting some more agreements with other school districts, or what caused that?
It was driven primarily by 3 new agreements. They were with Argyle ISD, Birdville ISD, and Carrollton Christian Academy. And we already
Pretty
have.
local.
Yes.
I mean, so many,
Right.
yeah.
And that's a big push as parents look to, to get their students prepared for college and to reduce the cost in the long run. Every credit you get ahead obviously is one that you don't have to pay for later on, so it's a big push. It's one of the fastest growing incentives in Texas. They recently passed a new law that allows younger students in high school down to 9th grade to start participating in dual credit, so it'll be interesting to see how. And then the federal government just this week announced in a brief article their intentions to start using the Pell funding for dual credit students in a pilot in the next year. So it's a new day when it comes to advanced credits.
We on our tour this morning, we were talking about the number of, I think it was 6 applicants to 1 space for the physical therapy and maybe occupational therapy too. And those, it almost sounded as if there was room for those people, but not the professors needed for.
That's correct.
taking. I mean, we could probably go up on our numbers where we able to teach them, had the people.
Yeah, and I think it's a quality, there are a lot of
Yes.
accreditation standards, clinicals, there's a lot of factors that go into play when you start looking at individual programs that would actually limit that. And so, those are things in which we constantly talk about internally.
Yeah,
But I certainly understand quality, and I certainly understand the desire to keep their programs producing the best. And so,
Sure.
so it's a fine line of balancing between growth and quality.
okay. Item number 2 is the report regarding update on the student housing market evaluation and financial analysis. Okay, we put the wrong person. Okay. Monica Mendes Graham, Vice President.
Great. Well, Gary Ray provided a nice segue to talk about university housing today. As you may know, at TWU, we have a very compelling need for university housing. We have had to place students in a hotel setting for the last 6 years. When we have opened our residential facilities, we actually have an existing contract with Select Apartments in Denton. Those the number of beds we actually have secured by that contract is an additional 200 bed spaces, and we've had that contract since 2011. The housing issue is a challenge because we want to be consistent with our culture of always providing a meaningful community experience. TW should make changes to the current housing system to avoid a negative impact on our recruitment, our retention, and to maintain that overall campus culture. Our future will likely include new housing facilities, renovations, and changes to the overall campus housing program that we currently have in place. As TW grows and we undertake multiple campus-wide initiatives, our available debt capacity to support a new student housing project is limited. As such, we are interested in pursuing all alternative financing structures, including alternative structures to support our housing enhancement objectives. Early on, I spoke with private entities, private housing, student housing developers, to learn more about the risk and returns of alternative housing structures. And it didn't take very long for me to learn that those private entities were focused on their own profit margins. It's important for TWU to remain focused on our mission, for us to remain focused on our desired outcomes. And the most successful developments are the result of a university-driven process, and that it's important that we define our project values and that we create a framework that prioritizes the variables from the onset of the undertaking. So with these dynamics in mind, TWU decided to work in partnership with a company by the name of Brailsford and Dunleavy. The company specializes in working with what I will call quality of life student facilities, including university housing. Their role is to work with TWU to provide a value management approach to facility development. Together, we will look at the housing project in the most economical way possible, and we seek together to ensure that TWU can best mitigate any potential risk. I brought with me today Peter Isaac and Carrie Rollman, and they're going to join me in just a moment, and they're going to give an update with regard to their work at Texas Women's University. In September, we met with Mr. Isaac and Ms. Rollman to outline our expectations for their work, and also to ensure that we provided an avenue from input from our leadership. And in addition, it was important that we provided an avenue for input from our TW students, which are critical because that is who would live in the residential facilities. Presently, they're in the middle of financial modeling, and we would expect to have a final report from them in December, but today is an opportunity for them to just update you with the work that they've done to date. So with that, I will ask them to come forward and provide you with an update on their work.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you all for taking some time today. We're really excited to be here. What Dr. Grant said, we're here really to provide you with just an overview of our process, an update, a high-level update of what we've done to date. We're not coming here with recommendations yet. We really just want to give you some context and hear if you guys have any questions or have any input so we can really work that into our process right now. high-level overview of our planning process, we really want to start with the why. Why are we building campus housing? What does it do for your community? We start with a visioning session. We engage with your leadership and a group from your cabinet in this visioning session to really understand that why question. From that, we really want to create a framework with your strategic objectives, and we use that to really evaluate decisions as we're going forward and understanding those decisions. We want to use high levels of student engagement through this process. Dr. Grant mentioned we want to have input from your students, input from the administrators. We do that in two different ways. We use a qualitative analysis and a quantitative analysis. We start qualitatively with meeting with students in person, having actual relationships, getting to know them, understanding what they're dealing with on an individual and small group basis. From there, we move into actually implementing a student survey. It went out to the entire student population, and that lets us really get a lot of data about your students and really start to analyze that quantitative information from them. Those two pieces together can help us really understand what we're trying to do for campus housing. And we take that and we put that into the financials, really understanding the economics of the project. We'll get into that a little bit further. But it includes both the existing campus housing financials, your future project financials, so what are we looking at for a future project, and the context that we're working with within your university campus. So talked a little bit about the visioning session. So this is the approach that we use when we went into that visioning session. We want to focus it in 4 strategic drivers: educational outcomes. How is housing contributing to your educational goals as an institution? Campus community. What are your goals for community and culture? You heard Dr. Grant talk about that a few times just now. Enrollment management. How is housing supporting the enrollment growth that you just heard from Gary? And financial performances and sustainability. What are your goals as an institution? What risks are you willing to take, and what are you willing to take those risks for? Some things that came out of this session are you have a lot of emphasis on campus culture and campus community. We want to support residential campus developments and campus communities. We not only want to focus on the first year experience, but the first year and sophomore experience, and really utilize housing as a retention mechanism for your sophomore students. You're losing a lot of students at sophomore year, and housing can be a big part of creating that community for those students. And from a financial aspect, we want to have a balanced approach. Student community and housing is really important, but we don't want to invest in something that puts you guys at financial risk. So we want to take that balance. As I mentioned, we had a lot of opportunities for student engagement. We had a number of focus groups. We talked with students on campus. We initiated a student survey. We had a 13% response rate, which is a pretty incredible response rate. That's actually very high. And what that allows us to do is really get a good statistical validity as we're evaluating the student responses. Through that survey, we were also able to test student demand for housing. What we're finding so far is that students really want to live on campus. They really value housing. They're very interested in housing. And through the survey, we actually created 2 surveys to actually understand the sensitivity of price point with respect to housing. And so through that, we're able to understand that we know accessibility and affordability is important to students, but we also know that it's so important for them to live on campus that there's actually not a huge sensitivity with respect to price point as we're looking at housing options.
Yeah, and we were surprised by that. Affordability is something that came through from both the administration and the students. And so when we analyzed the cost relative to what they're paying now, or the cost relative to what it would take to build something new, the demand fall off was not as significant as what we thought it was going to be. It's just based on the information from the focus groups and based on other questions in the survey talking about the experience, the culture at TWU is so important to them that they want to be part of it. And that really came through, especially during freshman year, or excuse me, first year. That was an important part of their development and their experience. In addition to understanding the strategic drivers and understanding the feasibility of the project, we also want to test the financial economics of the project. And like Carrie said, there's really 3 different avenues. One is, what are you students currently paying now? And if you build something new, is it going to fit within the framework of their current economics? The second is, what does it cost to build something new? And the reason we ended up testing 2 price points in the survey is that, which is unusual, I mean, it was customized for Texas Women's, is because the price point for a new housing facility is likely going to be a significantly more expensive price point than what you currently have on campus. So we wanted to test those. And then the third is looking at the campus as a whole. As you've heard already today and through the next couple of days, there's a tremendous amount of growth, which is extremely exciting. But there are some limits on the debt capacity of the entire institution. And so when you have a revenue producing project like student housing, there are some creative options that you can explore as it relates to public-private partnerships. And the reason that we run a process like this is that we've found there's 2 major problems if you just try to solve for a public-private partnership right out of the gate. The first is that the project isn't clearly defined by the university. And so you're asking the development partner to tell you what you're going to build, and that will cause 2 problems. One is it will either cause the project to stop at some point because you're not getting what you want, or you're leaving too much risk in the university side or not enough return in the university side. And so really understanding all of the financials is going to be important. And then once we understand the economics of the project, then the university can make a decision on whether or not to do it in-house with their own balance sheet or to use some kind of public-private partnerships type structure. As it relates to public-private partnerships, we're seeing a tremendous amount of innovation in the industry right now, especially as it relates to university development and student housing. It used to be that there was a one-size-fits-all model, and the developers would come to the campus and they said, this is the structure. Well, as more schools have faced debt capacity issues, more players have come into the market. And as more players came into the market, it put downward pressure on the return that the developers could get. So they started becoming more creative. Instead of beating each other up for the same product, they started creating some diversity in what they were offering. And a lot of it is now focused on the return of risk and the return that is generated from equity and risk. Credit assessments for universities are changing, the way that credit is being analyzed, the type of equity that's available is becoming more flexible, and all of this translates into innovation that provides really a lot of opportunity for the university, which makes it tremendously important that the university controls the development process and that the partner that comes in is really playing by your rules rather than the other way around. And so, like I said, there's a variety of structures. If through this process we determine that public-private partnership is something you want to explore, we have the ability to help you navigate that process. But really, we're looking at, over the course of the next month, helping to digest some of that information, working with campus administrators, and then providing a recommendation at the end of December. So again, this is still early in the process. We're about the halfway point, but we've been extremely impressed by the quality of thought leadership from the university and really impressed by the engagement from the students. It's been a successful process, and we think, given some of the other strategic initiatives that have been outlined, there's going to be something that works both strategically and economically and helps the campus continue to grow. So we really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today, and we're open to any questions you might have.
Is there any discussion?
I have a question.
Sure.
You mentioned your focus groups. How large were they? And what students did you speak with?
Yeah, we actually were able to have 4 different focus groups. Each focus group had somewhere between 10 and 15 students in them. Really, if you get beyond that, then you don't get input from the group. we organized them so we had first-year students in one group. We had sophomores through seniors that live on campus in a second group, sophomores through seniors who live off campus in a third group, and then we actually opened it up to graduate students as well, the fourth group. Got great input from all of them, really explaining what their experience is like. And I think one of the things that really came out to us was that the experience of community was different for every single student. You could be a first-year student living on the 15th floor, and it was different than a first-year student living on the 16th floor. And so one of the things that we're working on as we look at the operational budget is making sure that there's the right levels of programming consistently applied. The other thing we heard from a lot of students is, especially as it relates to Stark and Gwynn, which are the two high-rise facilities, is that there is one gigantic lounge space on the first floor of those buildings. And if you're a student who likes a large, loud environment, it's perfect. But if you're a student who's more introverted, then it can be challenging to interact and engage with other students. And so the diversity of the experience is something that they're really interested in, and I think is something that within the existing housing and with the new housing, we can help accommodate. Yes?
What percentage of our students on the Denton campus are commuter students coming from, they don't live in Denton, they're commuting from Dallas?
Right, I know the commuter number.
It's over 80%.
Over 80%.
Mm-hmm.
And out of that 80%, have they expressed interest that they would want to live on campus? Is that, do y'all?
So part of the survey to the students included asking students if you do not currently live on campus, is that something you would be interested in doing? So we did invite students who were commuting as well to participate.
Mm-hmm.
And the response from the students was tremendous. There was a very high level of demand for the students currently living at home with their families to move onto the campus. Now, when we calculate our demand projections to determine how to right-size the housing system, there are filters that we put in place in order to determine whether or not we think we could provide something that we believe they would actually move into. And one of the biggest filters is affordability. What are they currently paying for housing now?
Right.
How did they answer questions about why they weren't living on campus, that type of stuff? Because there was a surprisingly high demand from those students, but we don't think we're going to capture all of it, obviously. And so how you accommodate those students is something that will have a big impact on how fast the program can grow.
I have one introduction that I wanted to make as well. We have a new director of university housing, and she joined us today. Oh, here she is. So this is Jill Eckert, and Jill is helping us to really set the standard to look at housing at the university. She joins us. She was at Florida Atlantic University for 8 years, and then she went to Dartmouth State College. She has over 30 years of experience in working with residential life, and she has, at her previous institutions, worked with renovations. She's also built university housing and worked both with university-owned facilities as well as public-private partnerships. We are very excited to have her at the university. We believe that as we are moving forward and looking for the best opportunity for TWU, that she will help us to set the stage moving forward. So, Jill, I'm so excited to work with you.
It's a pleasure to be here at TWU.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to item 3, report on major construction activity. Ms. B.J. Crane, Vice President, Finance and Administration.
Good afternoon. Agenda item 3 is giving you information on construction projects, and if you'll recall, the last couple of meetings, we've been struggling with some of the informational reports that we've provided to you. So we've tried to kind of make this report a little more meaningful. We've taken out a lot of the non-necessary information. So basically what you have in front of you are all of the projects that you as a board have approved for us to move forward with. and just giving you the date of the approval, the amount that was approved, when the expected date is, and just a little bit of information on the status. So I'm going to quickly go through it just because it's the first time you've seen it in this format. And okay, so the first two items are fire code mandates. We've got these separated because of the funding source, and I think as all of you know, we're really careful about the type of space that we have and what money we can use to make renovations or build with. So those two, basically, there is no targeted end date, if you will. We're just going to get those done as quickly and as in succession as we can to meet the fire code issues that are on our campus. Wind start weatherproofing. This is again an auxiliary project. If you were here when I think it was somewhere around last year at this time, they were doing some renovations to those two high-rise residential housing units and realized that there were some problems with the brick facing on those two dormitories. So we had to come back to the board and ask for some additional authority to address the weatherproofing on those. Student Life Center safety upgrades. Basically, the fire alarms have all been upgraded now. We're waiting for the fire sprinkler to be installed and completed. Campus circulation and infrastructure, again, this is one of those ongoing. There's a lot of issues that we're trying to get addressed, and we're just going to address them as quickly in succession as we can. West Parking Garage, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but back in November of last year, you approved the authority for us to move forward on the parking garage, and what we'll be bringing forward to you later at this meeting is the approval of the architect engineer to start the planning and planning design on that. The outdoor pool demolition, that has been before this board a number of times. That is basically complete except for the lighting around the facility, or what used to be a facility. It's now just a nice piece of property on our campus. But the lights ended up, the kind of lights that were scheduled to go on there were on back order, and so we're waiting for those lights to come in before they can be installed. So we hope to have that one done relatively quickly. The landscape operation building, I think we brought this to you. We called it the Evers Barn, which is the name of it. There were some fire and life safety issues with it, so a lot of risks. So the best decision was to take that barn down. This is a maintenance facility for our grounds maintenance folks. They store a lot of their equipment, a lot of the chemicals, and then there's a small kind of a working environment for them. The storage addition to Margot Jones is basically storage for a lot of their musical instruments. I believe, if I recall, I could be wrong on this, but I think this had to do with some accreditation issues. So we needed to get some storage space in there before the accrediting agency came in. The new student union building was the project that we brought to you at the last board meeting. We have recently released the RFQ for architect and engineering services, and so we're moving forward with that. And the last one on the list is Starbucks. There was a contract that was approved right prior to the last board meeting by the chairman of the Finance and Audit Committee. We have initiated so in order to do that in the bottom floor of the library, we had to actually move a computer lab, and that lab has been successfully moved. There was also one individual who was displaced because of this change, and we have constructed an office for her, or for that individual. I'm not sure who it was, but that has been done. We've gotten all of the plans last week, I think is what Stephanie told me, to initiate the construction. So they will be issuing the purchase order next week. We will start initiating that. The last time I was here, I think we told you we were hoping to have a soft opening right before the kids left in December. That's been pushed back, so that soft opening will be right when the students get back in January. Construction is expected to be completed right close to the second or third week before the fiscal year, or the calendar year end. So anyway, this is the newest report that you'll be seeing. The thing that will be accompanying that is just a list of the contracts that have been signed associated with those projects. We have two on the list. One is for Margot Jones, and then the second one is for the landscape barn.
Okay. Any discussion, questions?
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
For the Starbucks in the library, will there be construction during finals week or?
It is scheduled to be going on. Now, if we need to, we'll work with Dean Byrd on that to make sure that we're not being too disruptive. But toward the end, I think the majority of the work will be Starbucks bringing in their equipment. And so I think that's scheduled for that very last day of the last couple of weeks. So I don't think, it's not gonna be jackhammers going on or anything like that.
Good question.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Now, item 4, consider recommending acceptance of grants.
Okay, again, just a reminder, per policy, we have to have the board approve any research grants that we have accepted since the last board meeting, as well as any kind of service contracts or grants. And so you'll see in front of you, right over $1 million on research grants from any number of federal agencies, some private foundations, some independents, and then about 1.5 million worth of other grants from a variety of federal contracts or grants. A lot of these, if you'll notice, are kind of interagency with other state agencies. There's one with Sam Houston, there's some with Coordinating Board and things like that, then a couple of other private foundations.
Now, item 5, consider recommending authorization of possible changes to the investment of Texas Women's University long-term and endowment portfolios and related necessary action. AJ?
Okay, so one of the recurring themes that I have heard since being here, and even before I got here, was the performance of our portfolio. And so I think all of you know we are under what's considered the Public Funds Investment Act, which is an extremely conservative set of requirements for investing. You're always looking at the corpus and making sure that you maintain that corpus pretty much at all costs. So we, in turn, the less risk you take, the less return you're going to get. However, several legislative sessions ago, the legislature opened a little bit of a loophole for individuals who were in the Public Funds Investment Act. So basically, you had to be, if you were in the Public Funds Investment Act, if you had over 25 million in endowments, you were allowed to go outside of that Public Funds Investment Act and be a little more aggressive with your investments. We don't fit that bill. The new legislation allowed us to basically partner or go into cooperation with another institution who did achieve the $25 million worth of endowments. And so this agenda item is basically asking the Regents to allow us to kind of explore the possibilities that are out there for us, compare those possibilities with what we're currently doing now, and then allow the Chancellor to execute a contract if that is the most economically feasible direction to go with our investment portfolio. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Are you looking at another firm or what, or a person?
We would
Yeah.
predominantly be looking at other institutions of higher education
To partner
to
with
partner. Yes.
public universities?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay,
Mhm.
okay. And then you can be a little bit more aggressive with
Right.
your
Right. If you're
equity
over,
or bond portfolio.
if you're over that $25 million, you can invest according to the prudent person rule, which allows you to be more aggressive
Right.
in the market.
Is there a benefit to those other institutions since we don't have, I mean, there must be.
To the
To
an
the
institution that
institutions
we
you're
would partner
partnering
with.
with.
It would be a service, like a service contract with them, so they would charge us X number of basis points. If you'll recall, any investment firm is going to charge us investment
Sure.
points. So they will charge us a fee to invest, but it's very possible that our investment returns would be higher. And my first blush look at this is the investment fee associated with using some of these other institutions could be lower than what we're being charged now.
Right. And is it, I mean, the percentage, is it like I mean, right now, are we 60 or 70% bonds and 30% equities, or what? And
We're
if,
heavy into bonds right
well, so I'm wondering what the,
Yeah. What this would do is you would go into basically another investment portfolio, if you will, and we would mirror whatever that institution, however that institution is handling it.
oh, right, okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 6, consider recommending authorization for the Chancellor and President to execute an architect engineer AE contract for the West Parking Garage. Adrian.
Okay, so this project was already in place before we talked at the last board meeting about kind of the process for new construction contracts or projects. So we're kind of trying to play catch up a little bit on this. So last November, you approved the university administration to start looking at designing a parking garage. So what we have done is we sent out an RFP for architects, engineers, and we ended up with 13 responses. Of those 13, we narrowed it down to 4 firms who came in for interviews. We had a selection committee that interviewed and basically graded the 4 firms that came in. We had, I may have to look back at Joe, we had Jacobs, HKS, OmniPlan, and the Smith Group. So those were the 4 firms that we brought in. HKS ended up at the top of the evaluations, and so basically what we're asking you to do is to allow us to negotiate that firm with that firm to go ahead and move forward with this parking garage.
Okay. Any discussion? Questions? Okay. Item 7, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7, TWU fundraising report. Ms. Heidi Tracy, Vice President, University Investments.
Good afternoon. I wanted to start off with my report. I think at the last meeting you may recall that Regent Pop asked for a different set of reporting so that we could start to see some projections and some actual goals toward reaching some of the university's goals. So one of the things that we had looked into is that as an institution, we were not tracking new commitments consistently, and we were only tracking cash. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that we will start tracking both numbers. And when you hear about campaigns, we were just talking about $1 billion campaign another institution was doing. That $1 billion is commitments. It's not cash, it's commitments. So I wanted to make sure that as we start to go through. So cash pledge would be if somebody comes and says, we're going to give you $100,000 and it's payable over 5 years. The $100,000 is a cash pledge, and that's counted as a new commitment. So if the same person came in and said, we're going to give you $100,000 and here's the check for $100,000, it would count as both an outright cash gift and it would count as cash. A pledge payment, if that first $20,000 comes in, that's cash, but you wouldn't count it as pledge or as a new commitment. A bequest expectancy is certainly a commitment. A realized bequest would only be counted if we had never booked it before, but it would also be cash. And then a gift in kind, those are tangible personal property that we were to receive, and we do count those as cash. When stock transfers come to us, those are counted as gifts in kind, even though so there is really some cash affiliated with actual spendable cash. You can add down, but you can't add across, because in some cases you'd be double counting. So that's how we'll start to report from moving forward. You'll start seeing reports on both new commitments and cash. And so I wanted to start off by saying that we're going to strive to bring in at least $7.5 million in new commitments in this coming year. This is a teaching tool that I am using for the staff. So I did want to point out that we had one person who got a little bit excited, and I don't think I can make my little red pointer work from here, but in the $1 million, we had projected new commitments at the $1 million level that will bring in 3. You'll see that there's actually 2 listed there already, but then a 0. That was somebody who knows of, we're pretty confident on 2 of those, but they've been verbal commitments, but we don't have the actual documentation, and so I'm also teaching the concept of don't count your chickens before they hatch. So that really should be a 0 on the actual there. But if you look down, this is how many gifts we're projecting to bring in, how many we've brought in so far at each level, and then where that is. You'll notice on the far right we have confidence level, and then an overall confidence level of what we think. And again, this is our first time doing this. It's certainly trying to establish a baseline, and we'll see how good we do with this, but we'll be coming back to you each meeting showing you our progress that way. I also thought it was important that we start to track. There'll be other things that we'll add as we go along. But again, it's important to know how those commitments come in and and so by gift type, this is how we're projecting. So of that $7.5 million, 38% will probably be bequest expectancies this year. So you'll see how that comes in. Moving forward, we'll show you what we projected and against actual. So again, we can start to build up a better baseline on how well we are at projecting what we're planning to do. On cash, we're projecting just over $15 million in cash for the year. This is important because this is what you actually get to spend. And so on the cash, right now, we knew we were going to have one gift at $5 million or greater. That was the Woodcock gift. We were projecting it would come in at $9.5 million. By the time we got it, it was right as the market had dipped, and so we ended up a little short on that. But we know overall we know that gift is going to be more than $10 million because there is still more to come. But right now, that's where that is sitting, and so you can go, and it's the same concept of by gift level, and this is all in your packets. So right now we're at $9.1 million on the year, and we're expecting to end at 15. And then there's the distribution on that. Of course, the big reason on pledge payment is the Woodcock gift would be a pledge payment, so that's why 60% of that's showing up as pledge payments. So are there any questions on that?
Okay, thank you. Now, item 8.
Thank you, this is excellent. On your 15 million, are those, when you look at the pledge payments and where the gifts are coming from, besides the Woodcock, are they major gifts from individuals? Are they
Foundations.
I mean, where?
Right now, we still, the bulk of our gifts are coming from cash. The cash gifts are coming from foundations and corporations. And, I'm fortunate that I have inherited a lot of great relationships that are out there, and from that end, and a lot of our, both in Houston, Dallas, Denton, and actually even in other areas of Texas, are really paying attention to what Texas Women's University is doing and the mission. And I think we have a real opportunity. So I certainly want to take advantage of that. But yes, we do need to bring up the individual gifts. Right now, we're not, in the month of November, we have our database consultants coming in working with us to map out and help us with the architecture of our database. Mm-hmm. By the next meeting, we'll be able to report to you much more easily who are individuals, who are foundations, and who are corporations. We don't have that consistently stored in our database right now, so that's why that's a report I cannot share with you yet. But we will be able to do that And that will be another one you'll see added to the fundraising progress report.
All right, now let's get on to item 8. Consider recommending of acceptance of gifts to TWU. Mrs. Tracy.
Yes, so at the last board meeting, we signed a new memo of understanding with the Foundation Board of Texas Women's University, but this is for the last quarter. That MOU took effect as of September 1st, so there were still some gifts that came in on the TWU side. I anticipate that will happen for a while, so this report just breaks down how many gifts that came in total during that last quarter. We had 176 gifts from 144 donors. The total amount of cash received was $918,120. Gifts to the university resulted in $651,985. The largest gift in that was the second payment of the Terry Foundation for the Terry Scholars Program, which was $588,350. So our average gift size was $5,300. Our median gift size was $100. I'm just going to divert a minute and say that's something you'll see us reporting a lot on moving forward, because the way that I believe a measure for you all to see how the health of your sustainable philanthropic program is growing is you certainly want the major gifts. You need the major gifts to come in, but you also need to be filling the pipeline. So what we will again try to establish is what's that baseline median gift and what the average gift, and you should start to see that average gift go up and that median gift go up a little bit. But if we're staying at right around right now, I think $100 is a nice level for us because we have to bring in a lot of new donors. We should be, you should expect for us to, within the next couple of years, really start to double the number of donors that we're bringing in, and that will be on that lower end. So you'll want to watch that. That's why I wanted to put that out there for you. Here is the distribution type. This is something that gets, again, at looking at how our monies are being brought in and expended. So we added $45,000 to endowed scholarships, $607,000 to expendable scholarships. We had just under $1,000 to other endowments, and our discretionary programmatic support. Those are gifts to departments mainly for discretionary use is $40,880, and then realized bequests of $223,618.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, just a quick question. With your annual fund, do you feel like your alumni donor base is in good shape? Or I have two questions. One, what percent of alumni give at TWU, and what is that average gift?
Right now, the percentage of alumni giving to Texas Women's University, either the foundation or directly to the university, when we combine that number, is just under 1%.
0.75.
So
That's an area that.
yeah. So,
But you know, really, the national statistics are, even Texas A&M University and University of Texas, their alumni giving is like 3 or 4%. I mean, it should be up, but it's not. I
Well,
mean,
Isn't the average like 7 to 8%?
yeah,
national
it's
average?
been declining over time, but the national average, it used to be, it was right around 16%. It's been on the decline.
7 or 8%.
But
now.
yeah, but most institutions, state institutions, are just under 10% right now. Yes.
And I would hope that we would be seeing an aggressive annual fund
Yes.
plan
Yes.
with this.
Yes.
And what's the you know what the average gift is for that?
For our group,
0.75%,
it's not much above the median gift.
to $100.
Yeah. What's pulling our average gift up are those foundation gifts.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but there's a lot to be said about that. But I think part of it is we've got to be ready to ask. And we typically ask just a few times a year. And so with your help, we'll be able to start, in January, you're gonna see an aggressive campaign for annual fund.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Item 9, consider recommending approval of Sharon Loretta Brocker endowment change.
So this is an endowment that sits on the university side, and Ms. Brocker has passed away, and this is really one that the intention is not changing, but we feel it's important to have it read into the record. When she established this was a scholarship for graduate students majoring in speech. Well, speech is no longer called the major. It's in the English department. It's called it's part of rhetoric. And so we're just asking that you consider having the intention changed so that we can change the gift agreement to be given out to rhetoric, students who are majoring in rhetoric.
All right, thank you.
I'm glad the agreement was written that way so that it spelled out that it was, it was okay to change it.
We're getting much better at anticipating that endowments are for perpetuity. So, and the world around us changes.
All right, thank you very much. And now the last item, 10, quarterly status report of the Office of Internal Audits. Mr. Rover.
Thank you. Good afternoon. First quarter 2016 for our office has been very busy. We completed 2 audits. One was Texas Administrative Code 202, which relates to security standards, and also a rather large audit related to tuition and fees. You received those audit reports during the quarter. We have 6 audits in progress right now. Career Services, that's in the draft report stage. We're currently awaiting management responses on that audit. Investments, Budget Office, Facilities Development Projects, Colleague, and Benefits Paid Proportional by Fund are all in the field work stage at this point. We completed 3 follow-up audits, which were Fitness and Recreation, Information Technology Governance, and also Clery Act. And management has taken action as a result of those audits. We have 1 follow-up audit in progress, which is the payment card industry data security standard. That should be finalized hopefully within the next week. The other activity we routinely do, of course, is continuing education required by the Texas Internal Auditing Act, reviewing the quarterly investment reports that you receive. The last 2 bullets I think are most important. We completed our 2015 annual internal audit report. That's required by the Texas Internal Auditing Act and essentially summarizes all the activity that we did during 2015 and also some additional requirements that the State Auditor's Office has put in there as well. We completed our internal quality assurance review. That, as you may recall, our total quality assurance, there's an external component to it where we have an external reviewer come in every 3 years. There's also an internal component. And part of that internal component is we go through a self-assessment, usually at about the 1.5-year mark. And we actually had, well, I feel we're in compliance with standards. I think we're doing good. We did have one item that we identified for improvement in our office. When we do our preliminary assessment, we do it in a narrative format, and then from there we decide on what we're going to test, and that's in the fieldwork stage. And everything is documented properly, but we felt that there was a chance for improvement to link those two and identify the risks in the preliminary assessment and tie them actually to the fieldwork steps that we're doing when we go out in the field and do our audit work. And we've already got that process in place for these first couple of audits that we're working on. And that concludes my report.
All right, any discussion? Very well, thank you.
Thanks.
Now, having heard all items on the agenda, do I have a motion to consider recommending approval for the following action items as discussed? Items 4, 5, 6, 8, and 9.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Nay? The ayes have it. Presentations and recognitions, do we have any? None today. And therefore, now we can adjourn. If there are no further business, the meeting of the Texas Women's University Board of Regents Finance and Audit Committee is adjourned at 3:19. Exactly 1 hour.